Betsy and Simon, the aunt and uncle of a rabbi in California. Aunt Betsy and Uncle Simon, this past summer, took a trip to Israel, and they happened to decide, the whole trip to Israel was not planned originally, they just decided on a whim to go. And one day of the trip, they decided to go to Herzliya, beautiful, beautiful area. I was there this past summer. If you're ever in Israel, I strongly recommend it. Beautiful, beautiful waterfront in Herzliya. So they went to this very, very nice restaurant, 2-floor restaurant. They went out to eat in Herzliya. And they asked to be moved. First they were sat, the maitre d' seated them on the ground floor. They asked to be seated on the second floor. They wanted to see the view. If you know the area over there, it's really a beautiful, beautiful view of the water and the ships. And so they get a waiter. The waiter comes over to them, and they're hocking around with the waiter, with the menu. He's explaining to them. They're kidding around with him a little bit. And finally, as the waiter's walking away, he says to Betsy, my name is Barak. So something shakes her at that moment, and she doesn't know exactly what possessed her to ask the next question, but she asks the waiter, what's your mother's name? And the waiter says to them, my mother's name is Orna. And she tells over the story. There's a video on the internet, perhaps you could take a look at it later. She says that when she heard that, she started shaking, and it's like she didn't even hear it. It was like in a dream. And she says to him, did you fight in last year's war against Gaza, the war in Gaza? And he said, as a matter of fact, yes, I was one of the fighters who fought in the war. Apparently, some of you may remember from last summer, the terrible war that we were fighting, that there was a group of people that got together and arranged that anyone who would like to in the United States or all over the world, you could call up a phone number and they would give you the name of a soldier that you can daven for, so that your tefillos would go to protect that particular soldier. And this woman, Betsy, from Beverly Hills, California, for the entire summer, and not only for the entire summer last summer, but throughout the year, because he was still in his army service, even after the war ended, she had plastered up in her kitchen Barak ben Orna. Not exactly the most common name, Barak ben Orna. And really, if you think about the chances, what are the chances she ended up going to Israel, having to go to Herzliya, asked to be put on the second floor, and specifically that waiter that served them that time, he had now gotten out of the army, and she told him that she, like just 2 weeks ago, this was I think in August, so 2 weeks before that, in late July, she had just been she saw that name still plastered up on her cabinet. She was wondering, what's going on with Barak ben Orna? How's he doing? What's happening with him in his life? I wonder what's going on with him. And incredibly, coincidentally, she happened to head into that restaurant and meet up with the waiter, and met face to face with the person who she had been davening with. And she proceeds to tell this waiter, you should know that I've been davening for you for the last year. Every single day I say, take out my tehillim, and I daven for you that you will be safe in the war. And this soldier was so moved. Apparently he hadn't put on tefillin in a number of years. He was very moved by the fact that there was a woman who didn't know him, didn't care about him necessarily, didn't know about him, who was davening for him across the ocean, that he says in this video, you could see it, that he was so moved by it that he decided to put on his tefillin again, which he hadn't been wearing for a long time. I think that one of the greatest challenges, first of all, to davening, to prayer, every morning, afternoon, and evening, as Orthodox Jews we do, one of the greatest challenges is it's sometimes hard for us to feel that there's somebody on the other end of the line listening. We don't really feel that our prayers are landing anywhere. And I was no different than you growing up, also had a lot of difficulty with this. When my wife and I got married, so for a couple of years, we did not have any children. My wife had a number of miscarriages. We were married for a couple of years. And I had the privilege to be living in the land of Israel. And I remember very, very specifically as if it was yesterday. One time, in the middle of our trip, being in Israel, I was learning in Yeshiva University's Gris Kol at the time. I remember going to the Kotel once. This had been after a number of years of trying to have children, not being able to have children. I remember one particular time I just said, I'm in Israel, I'm at the Kotel, I have the ability to go daven, so I remember going to the Kotel. I remember that particular tefillah to have been a particularly inspiring one, a particularly lengthy one, where I really tried to pour out my thoughts. And Baruch Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu responded and answered the tefillah. And he, B'liyai Hara, Baruch Hashem, answered it many times after that. Not always do we have experiences in life where we know that there's somebody else on the end of the line. But this is what Hashem tells us in the Torah, and this is what our Chachamim and our parents and grandparents have taught us throughout the years. And the Gemara teaches us in Maseches Nida Daf Ayin Amud Beis, if a person wants wisdom, he wants to do well on his tests, he wants to learn knowledge, he wants to accumulate knowledge, what's a person supposed to do? He's got to sit and study, the Gemara says. He's got to sit and study. Yarba v'yeshiva v'yamayit b'schora. But the Gemara says, a lot of people sit and study and it doesn't work. They study and put in a lot of effort, they still don't achieve. So the Gemara says you have to ask for help from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We have a prayer that we say, Atachoni lo das. The Gemara says, Haba lo avdek. One without the other doesn't work. If you just daven and don't study, ain't going to happen. If you study and don't daven, also ain't going to happen. The Gemara says, what should you do if you want to have parnasa? You want to be successful in life, you want to have a living. You have to do both. You got to work for a living and you have to daven. Haba lo avdek. One without the other won't happen. The Gemara says, what do you want to do if you want to have children? I was so blown away the other day. For the last, B'liyai Hara, Hashem has blessed me to have been teaching Gemara for the last 24 years, B'liyai Hara. And every year, pretty much, I open up in class the first day with the same questions. Why do we learn Torah? Why do we learn Gemara? I was talking to the freshmen the other day at the freshman orientation. I was blown away. I don't remember who it was. But one of the freshmen actually, we talked about this question at freshman orientation. One of the freshmen actually raised his hand and gave the right answer. Something might be brewing specially this year. And the gentleman said that the reason we learn Torah is to create a relationship with Hashem. The reason we daven is to create that relationship, is to identify and acknowledge that beautiful, special relationship that we have. It's a time every single morning we have to turn to Hashem for all the things that might be going wrong or right in our lives, to thank Him for the things that are going right, and to ask for help in those things that we think aren't going right. And the reason we study Torah is because Torah is a description of who Hashem is. And the best way to actually create a relationship, and the best way to have an understanding and to actually understand what Hashem wants from us in this world and to have that relationship is to study Torah. And that's what each one of us is going to have the incredible privilege of doing over the coming year with our new Rabbi. And I just want you to remember every moment of this year, gentlemen, and every moment of every year. The reason I'm going to be walking into the gym and asking you to wear a yarmulke when you play ball is not because I get my kicks that way. It's not because I feel the rush of power when I can come in and say, if you're not wearing a yarmulke, you can't play ball in the gym. It's because I'm trying to encourage you to have that relationship with Hashem that a yarmulke symbolizes. When a person wears a yarmulke, he basically says, all day and all night, I know whose team I play for. I know where I'm supposed to be. And when you wear a yarmulke, especially around a lot of other kids who aren't wearing yarmulkes in the world, you make a very special Kiddush Hashem. But certainly in our yeshiva, you do that. when I'm going to ask you to behave yourselves appropriately at ball games this year, and to only say nice things and to cheer positively and to chant positively, it's not because I get my kicks that way. It's not even because I'm trying to make a good impression on the public. All those things are certainly true, and we want to make sure people have a certain view of our yeshiva. But it's because of much more than that. Because a person who has a relationship with Hashem acts in a certain way. A person who represents Hashem, he carries himself in a certain way. He speaks in a certain way. He dresses in a certain way. He learns in a certain way. It's a privilege. It's a privilege. And when I ask every member of our yeshiva community throughout this year and throughout all future years to treat every other member of our yeshiva community with the utmost respect, to never say anything negative that would make somebody else feel low or feel hurt, or to look down your nose at somebody else who might not be as smart as you, or who might come from a different background as you, or who might have certain different family customs than you, or might struggle in school more than you do, or less than you do. I'm not doing it for any other reason than because a Jew who has a relationship with Hashem understands that we have to treat everybody with respect. So I want to give each and every single boy here a bracha. I am so excited to see each one of you, most of you back, and some of you, I'm so excited to see each one of you joining our yeshiva for the first time. There's somebody else on the other side of the siddur. There's somebody else who's in the Gemara. There's somebody else who cares about the way I speak and the way I interact. If we remember that, if we remember the whole root of our Judaism, the whole root of our Yiddishkeit, we will have that special relationship with Hashem. He will always be there to listen to us, to answer us. He doesn't always say yes when we ask for things, because he has a different kind of plan sometimes. But he's always listening. And he always is there to respond and to answer and to care about us and to watch over us and to make sure that what's supposed to happen to us does happen to us. May in this merit of our taking our davening seriously, our learning seriously, our midos of how we talk to other people and about other people seriously, may each one of us be inscribed in the book of life and health and hatzlacha in ruchnius and gashmis and all that we do. May we have an awesome, fantastic, successful year, each one of us.